The Pentagon has cleared the transfer of Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine just as Russia reels from one of the largest waves of energy strikes of the war. The timing could hardly be more perfect, as while American officials finalize paperwork, Ukrainian missiles have already plunged parts of Russia, including Moscow, into darkness, Euromaidan Press media outlet says. The Pentagon's clearance means all technical and logistical checks for the Tomahawk handover are complete, leaving only the presidential signature as the final holdup. The system, with a range of roughly 1,600 kilometers, would allow Ukraine to reach virtually any critical target within Russia. Ukraine is actively preparing for the deliveries so they can be used as soon as they arrive in the country, as Kiev has already begun experimenting with strike coordination, precision mapping, and damage modeling to learn how best to exploit the new range once it is authorized. The first clear demonstration came with the Neptune missile strikes on Russia's energy grid when Ukrainian forces hit the Oryol thermal power plant and the 750 kilovolt Vladimir substation, crippling two of the most important nodes in central Russia's grid. The Oryol plant alone supplied around 40% of the region's electricity and 2/3 of its central heating, meaning the attack instantly cut power and hot water to several districts. Euromaidan Press reports. Footage from the scene showed one of the cooling towers partially destroyed and the switchyard in flames. In Vladimir, multiple explosions tore through the substation that powered industrial facilities tied to Russia's defense sector. The scale and precision of these strikes marked the first successful use of the domestically upgraded Neptune against deep inland Russian infrastructure, a test run for what Tomahawks could later achieve on a national scale. The damage extended far beyond these two sites, as a total blackout hit the Russian-controlled Luhansk region after the Shchastia thermal power plant went offline, while emergency cuts were reported near Moscow in the town of Zhukovsky following fresh drone activity. In the capital suburbs, residents filmed entire districts without light, and Russia's electricity-dependent rail transport systems were disrupted until power could be restored. Russia's grid operators described the situation as a malfunction, but the pattern of fires, smoke, and power loss left little doubt that coordinated Ukrainian strikes were underway. Euromaidan Press says, for Kiev, this was proof of concept that a precision campaign can simultaneously hit energy, heating, and logistics hubs hundreds of kilometers apart. Further north, Bryansk and Kursk experienced successive explosions at the Novobryansk and Zelezhnogorsk substations, resulting in cascading failures along the western grid. In Crimea, powerful hits set the Simferopol thermal power plant ablaze, while in occupied Melitopol and Berdyansk, substations powering Russian army communications and radar systems were destroyed. Ukrainian commanders estimated that these operations disabled approximately 5,000 megavolt amperes of generating and transmission capacity in a single coordinated series of raids. As substations were knocked out one after another, parts of the remaining Russian grid, particularly in the Far East, began to overload, triggering failures in Russia's far eastern provinces. Each strike compounds the next, eroding Russia's ability to sustain both civilian infrastructure and the industries feeding its war effort. Ukraine's energy strike campaign has evolved into a strategic weapon in its own right, one that tests the very limit of Russian resilience, Euromaidan Press claims. The blackout around Moscow is not just a technical failure, but a glimpse of what sustained long-range pressure could look like once Tomahawks arrive. If the transfer is approved, Ukraine will gain the means to reproduce this level of damage across Russia's heartland with far greater precision and frequency. For Moscow, the challenge is no longer simply defending refineries or frontline depots, but protecting an entire national grid under siege. Ukrainian militants are currently preparing a massive strike against targets on Russian territory, according to the Telegram channel Legitimny. The publication notes that Kiev hopes to use this strike to distract Ukrainian audiences from the Ukrainian armed forces' disaster in Pokrovsk. As the outlet points out, Britain recently donated a large batch of Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine for precisely this purpose. The missiles were given as a life-saving media tool to offset the betrayal, since no one would give money in this situation. The British also chose the target. It was significant in terms of media coverage. Legitimately notes. The author of the publication adds that a Russian retaliatory strike could be a real catastrophe for Ukraine, so residents of Kiev-controlled territories should be prepared for this. Recall, United Kingdom has delivered a new shipment of Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Ukraine to support continued long-range strikes inside Russia. Bloomberg reported, citing people familiar with the matter. According to Bloomberg, the delivery of an unspecified number of missiles was made to ensure Kyiv maintains sufficient stockpiles through the winter months when London expects Russia to intensify attacks on Ukrainian civilians. Officials quoted by the outlet said the resupply is part of Britain's ongoing effort to demonstrate that Western support for Ukraine will outlast Russia's ability to sustain its war. The British government has not disclosed the total number of Storm Shadow missiles provided to Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion and does not routinely announce new transfers. The missiles, manufactured by European defense company MBDA, have a range of over 250 kilometers and employ a combination of inertial, GPS, and terrain reference navigation for precision strikes. According to Bloomberg, the latest shipment follows Ukraine's confirmed use of Storm Shadow missiles against targets inside Russia. Ukraine first deployed the British-made long-range missiles against military targets in Russia in November 2024, shortly after receiving approval from Washington to use certain US-supplied weapons such as ATACMS for limited strikes across the border. Bloomberg noted that Storm Shadows require US targeting data to operate at full effectiveness. Earlier, President Vladimir Zelenski said that Ukraine now conducts nearly all of its long-range precision strikes using domestically developed weapons. From Europe's long-range weapons, we use only Storm Shadow in normal quantities and a smaller number of Scalp missiles. We don't have any other European long-range systems, Zelensky said. Overall, about 90 to 95% of our long-range strikes are carried out with our own weapons. The president also confirmed the combat use of Ukraine's newly developed missile systems, Flamingo and Ruta. Flamingo has been used in combat. Ruta, too, he said.